Thank you for joining our online dialogue, co-hosted by ECNL, Forum Asia, and Universal Rights Groups Africa. My name is Francesca Fanucci from ECNL, and I will be moderating this session. We will be learning about the latest trends at global and regional level in climate activism, and with a particular look at the rise of acts of civil disobedience online and offline. And we will explore also how digital surveillance and harassment impact the activists' rights to operate free from retaliation and reprisals. We will also discuss, hopefully, how to empower environmental defenders to engage in international mechanisms and initiatives to protect their activism from state repression. Now, before delving into the thick of it, I have some important housekeeping information to share. First of all, this session is going to be recorded and will be kept for future viewing on RightsCon platform. So if you have any concerns at any point about parts of the session being available, please contact me or the other organizers at the emails that are going to be shown in the chat. Also, your insights will be shared with your attribution by default. And again, if you do not consent to this, please let us know in advance in the chat. Given our very tight time constraints, we will be taking your questions to the speakers primarily in the chat. So you're most welcome to add them throughout the session. And the speaker will reply to them at the end of all their interventions. But if there is not enough time to answer all of them, don't despair, because we will transfer them in a shared document that is now going to be posted in the chat. And our speakers will answer them there, if not immediately in the next few days, because this shared document will remain available for at least another week. And you are very welcome to leave more questions even, and your contact details if you wish to receive our session report with our summary and next steps for actions. Now, enough with my blabbing, and let's break the ice with a few introductory questions on our topic directly to you participants, and we have them in a poll that our kind moderator is going to show now. Thank you. So the first question is, what is your understanding of civil disobedience? And you have quite a few options, and you can choose more than one. So do you think that civil disobedience entails deliberate law breaking? It has to be anonymous or publicly conducted in physical or only space or line space, or in both either? Does it have to be non-violent? Can it cause significant disruptions to others' activities? Does it have to be conducted in the pursuit of the public interest, or personal opinions only, or also conscience, or even all of the above? I'll give you just a few seconds to think and choose. And our second question, as you can probably see, is also, well, have you personally been engaged in any acts of civil disobedience as a form of environmental activists? And it might be yes, even if it's only occasionally, no, or perhaps you have no idea if that's the case. And the final question is, have you experienced any digital type of surveillance, including online on the internet, or if you have experienced any online or digital harassment as a result of your environmental activism? I cannot see the questions. I don't know if our technical moderator can ensure that at least the participants do see them. Oh, I see. Okay, they have been launched. Fair enough. Okay, we are waiting for responses. I can give you 1 more minute. And I see there are not many participants at the moment, so the answers should be quite straightforward. No, actually, I cannot. Yeah. I can see actually us as participants. I cannot see. Could we maybe close the poll and see the results for the moment? If they can be visible to us, moderator and speakers as well. Thank you. Our moderator is working on that, please. We are currently having a few technical hitches. Well, I'm glad that it's you. I mean, at least I feel less guilty for my awkwardness sometimes with the technical means. Maybe while we wait for the results, we can still start with, our and comments on the results later. Maybe some people are still thinking about it, and we can definitely introduce our first distinguished speaker, the UN Special Rapporteur on Environmental Defenders under the Aarhus Convention, Michel Forst. Thank you so much for accepting to be with us today, Michel. And perhaps could you tell us, start by telling us about your mandate and your work to protect environmental defenders that engage in activism, both physically and online? The floor is yours, Michel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. And yes, my mandate is a very new mandate, a recent mandate, which has been created inside the Aarhus Convention. And for those who are not familiar with UN Convention, that's a global convention on environmental democracy, to which currently 46 states are parties, plus the EU. And we have one African state which has recently joined the membership of the convention. But the rest of the countries are mostly based in Europe, Central Asia. And inside this convention, there is an article 3.8, which contains what we call a sort of binding obligation for states to protect environmental defenders. And states have decided to create what they call a rapid response mechanism to deal precisely with threats, with attacks, with penalization against defenders. And the idea was to create this mechanism to make sure that states would understand the need to protect defenders and to be seized by the mandate, could also put in place protection measures for defenders. The scope of the mandate is very broad, in fact. Within the 46 countries, I'm able to protect any environmental defenders from threats and from attacks coming from any actor. It could be the state, it could be the police, It could also be companies operating inside the countries. And outside the 46 states, like for instance in Africa or in Latin America or in Asia, I'm also able to protect defenders when they are threatened or attacked by companies that are based in one of the countries which has ratified the convention. Just to give you an example, if you have a company based in the UK operating in Indonesia, for instance, and threatening defenders in Indonesia, then those defenders could also seek protection for my mandate. Another very famous example is in Africa. If you have a company based in Paris operating in Uganda, for instance, threatening defenders, then those defenders could also seize the mandate because the mandate has this extraterritorial scope. The tool that I'm using are similar to other reporters, mostly diplomatic tools, but also public tools. I'm speaking with ministers, with governments to raise awareness and to make sure that states will understand the urgency to take action to combat those attacks. I'm also doing a lot of visits, country visits, to meet with defenders. And since I started in 22 with this mandate, I've done a lot of country visits to meet also with climate activists and young people using new forms of mobilization, what we call civil disobedience, in fact, new forms of mobilization. And I've been impressed by the level of repression that I'm currently facing by the police, but also by law enforcement officers inside the legislation, new legislation being developed to target those defenders, and also what's happening at courts, which is for me really impressive on how to see courts treating these young climate activists. To be concrete, Francesca, there is no official definition of civil disobedience, of course, but that's why I've decided to develop my own definition that I'm using inside my UN mandate to protect defenders. And for me, that's clearly 4 cumulative criteria. The first is deliberate law-breaking. The second one is public interest. That is, they are doing that to protest against a law which is unjust or a policy which is not fair, or the lack of action from states like to implement, for instance, the Paris Agreement. It should be public and should be not violent. We don't have time to go into details, but the criteria of violence is for me very important. And people should understand, and states should understand that civil disobedience is protected, in fact. Is protected by the international law as a form of protest, which is clearly defined by international laws, and judges need to understand that it is protected. And that's why, because I see that there is not a good understanding of this definition, I've decided to develop, together with ECNL and others, guidelines for states on environmental protest and civil disobedience. And currently, there is a public consultation until the end of March. And if you have the possibility, go to see these draft guidelines and provide comments or inputs to these draft guidelines.
Thank you, Michelle, for this very insightful overview. And soon we will be posting information also and the link to the draft guidelines for your consultation. We invite all the participants to have a look and send feedback. I'm also curious at some point, hopefully, to see the results of the poll, because you gave us your definition of a civil disobedience, and to see if it would, if there is a similar understanding among the participants. And you also mentioned your work with for the protection of defenders. And indeed, now I'm very keen to hear the voice of some of the defenders on the ground, starting from our distinguished guest, Hugo Giabini, who is an environmental activism leader from the Saramacca community in Suriname. Welcome, and we are very grateful that you are here, and even despite challenges in the connection. Thank you very much, Hugo. And yes, in what way has your climate activism been carried out? And have you conducted any acts of civil disobedience, either physically or online? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Francisca. Thank you, everyone. Yes, to be short, as Samaka people, we are a tribal people in Suriname. We have refused for more than 3 decades the land use policy of the government Suriname, and we have organized our community to so that we are able to file cases, successful case to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, and result in the victory of the Samaka judgment, where the court obliged Suriname to legally recognize our rights. We have more than 200 community meetings, organize our people to inform them, to motivate them of the ultimate take action against land right policies. We filed more than 10 cases in petition in Suriname. We bring together activist organization, scientists, and to expose the public in public space with evidence the detrimental effect of government land use policies. We organized 2 protests in Paramaribo, the capital of Suriname, and 1 in our own community to block logging roads, to stop them and take spiritual action. So why do we ask the spirit of to fight with us? We're using legal system, national and international, to highlight our cause, having public events with the civil society, also government, and discuss the position to expose impactful policy of Suriname. We always sabotage some logging roads. Online civil disobedience, we had radio programs, campaign, creating awareness among Samaka people on how land policy violate rights of important refusing. Creation of WhatsApp group as a space to update and regular discussion among our remote community areas. We produce videos for national and international support against road building within our territory. We create also international visibility through newspapers such as The Guardians, Reuters, and Mongabe, and have a successful media campaign using robust data to create awareness and support our citizens. Having interview in radio and TV to amplify our message. Launched online petition, which has nearly 6,000 signatures, and have an online international advocacy campaign that's still going. So now I'm currently in my community. If you can look at the background, you can see the river there. So this week we will go through all 10 communities to have a meeting them to update them on a new law that is submitted to the government, to the parliament, which will also violate our rights, which will prevent us to come up for our rights. So and so it's on ongoing process. We tried also to attend as much as possible international fora to present our case, to put the Suriname case, the Samaka case on the agenda, on the international agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. What a wonderful setting. So much worth fighting for. Thank you for doing it on behalf of the whole world as well. And my question now would be, I mean, if somehow the digital space has entered into your campaign, or if it has affected your campaign in any way.
Well, the digital space, of course, it will affect its help. It gives us visibility, but also it put us also in a dangerous situation where we got threatened, we got criminalized, and I was forced to leave Suriname to be in exile for 6 years. So these are also one of the the result of the consequence of this disobedience activities I undertook.
Thank you for this very insightful account of your experience. And now we would like to move on to our second activist guest, that is Disha Ravi, from an activist from Fridays for Future in India. Welcome, Disha. You're a really brave climate justice activist, and we will all hear now in a moment why. So can you tell us about your activism and how you have used the online space to promote it? The floor is yours, Disha.
Thank you, Francesca. Hi, everyone. My name is Disha. I am a climate justice activist based in India. I primarily work with Fridays for Future in India. We are a climate justice movement that focuses on environmental issues, land rights, and honestly, anything related that would impact our planet. I started my journey when I was around 19, 20, and started working with Fridays for Future India then. And during our first year, we had a great year because we were able to take to the streets and protest and organize climate strikes, have tree plantation drives, do so much mobilization work. But it was very short-lived because in 2020, when the pandemic hit, we had to rely on digital tools to continue our activism. And it was very new to us. And while we did use social media, and while most of the team at Fridays for Future India are young people, it was very daunting to completely shift from mobilizing on ground to mobilizing digitally. And our first experience of that was in 2020 when the government of India passed a draft amendment to an existing bill, which is called the Environmental Impact Assessment. The environmental regulations on infrastructural buildings, mostly new ones, but also existing ones across the country. And they invited feedback or suggestions or objections to the amendments that they had made, to the draft amendments that they had made. And we used our website to draft out like an objection, detailing out why it's not working. And people were invited to use that template to email people. Before the first deadline, we managed to mobilize 200,000 people. And by the final deadline, we had managed to mobilize 2 million people collectively with a lot of other environmental groups across the country. But during the first deadline, our website got taken down. And initially, we thought it was because we had a lot of traffic. It's not every day that 200,000 people are coming to an environmental website. But we found out it's because the government of India, especially the Minister of Environment himself, had requested the police to block our website. And they had put very stringent charges of terrorism against our organization. And we were all very scared. But we did figure it out, and we challenged it, and it was eventually removed. But our website was blocked for a really long time, and we had to face terrorism charges for sending emails that the government themselves requested. So it was a very scary period, and we were, completely in accordance with law. And in the end, we did manage to get the amendments removed from being implemented. So it was a victory, but it came with a lot of risks that we did not expect. And it only got worse a year later. But I think I don't have too much time to dwell on that, but I wanted to mention how we overcame this. And we had amazing lawyers from Internet Freedom Foundation who are also at the RightsCon at the moment, who supported us pro bono and made sure we were safe. And we got our website back, and all charges were dropped. So that was a victory for us.
Thank you. Congratulations on your success about the law. But yes, I mean, so did you think you have experience also among the challenges that you mentioned, any digital surveillance or online harassment targeting because of your successful activism?
Yeah, definitely. I think this was one of the biggest online threats that we personally experienced. And a few months shortly after that, but the pandemic was still ongoing, and we were mobilizing in support of the farmers' movement that was going on in the country. And there was a toolkit share that was linked back to me, and the toolkit was alleged to have caused violence in the capital, something that we had no idea about, something we had nothing to do with. And I was personally arrested for that. And I was jailed for over 10 days. I got my bail because the court couldn't find any evidence that the police claimed. But this was something that led to a lot of uproar, because it was while this happened, like while I was picked up and arrested physically, it was caused because of an online toolkit that was alleged to be something it's not. And we believe that this violence was a recurring event, and it was a crackdown on our digital rights, especially around environment and climate, since 2020. And after that, we've constantly been targeted on the internet for our work. All of our members are pretty scared of even putting out their information on for the example, their LinkedIn, because we're afraid of being doxxed. It's happened to a few of our members before, where their workplaces received calls and they're like, oh, did you know that your teammate or the person who studies in your university volunteers at Fridays for Future, and this is what they've been up to. So it has been ongoing since 2020, and we have been battling it. And it's a scary period for all of us, but we're hoping it gets better. And it hasn't stopped our work. We continue today as similar to how we were in 2020, because we strongly believe in environmental and climate justice.
Thank you. I'm very sorry to hear that. And what happened to you is actually in a segue to what we would like to hear from our next speaker, who is Chido Dan. Thank you for being with us. She joins us from Australia, so thank you for the unwelcome time that you are experiencing to join us. Chido is a senior campaigner on digital threats at Global Witness. That is an international NGO, for those who don't know it, whose work focuses on climate emergency and attacks on civic space. Welcome again, and can you tell us how your organization examines the impact that digital space has on climate activism, and what are your findings to date? The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for having me. I'm very honored to speak alongside such a distinguished panel. As Francesca mentioned, I'm Chido and I work at Global Witness, and we're an international NGO with our roots in investigative journalism. And for decades, we've been documenting and raising awareness on attacks on environmental defenders and examining trends in the violence that we see emerge. I work in the digital threats team, and so we look at the role that big tech plays in all of this, and particularly how their business models can hinder climate action and put minority and marginalized groups at risk, such as environmental defenders. A trend that we and others like Amnesty had seen emerge over the years is that more and more the online space is being used to lay the groundwork for physical violence, arrests, attacks that happen offline later on. So we wanted to get a fuller picture of this and to understand better how it's playing out at a global scale. And so our aim was to conduct one of the first global polls of climate activists and environmental defenders in relation to the threats that they face online. Our thinking was, if we can show that defenders and activists are being attacked online, and these attacks are not only having a harmful effect on the individuals concerned, but on the climate movement as a whole, then we can demonstrate that, self-regulation isn't working, and we can put more pressure on the tech platforms and the regulators to create and enforce better policies. And we hope that by doing this, We can create a safer space online and stop the spread of climate disinformation and help facilitate climate action advocacy. So that was our thinking in terms of what we've done. We've reached out to over 130 organisations and networks around the world at a national, regional, and global level. And we started this in November last year, and it's still ongoing. We've asked participants about 20 questions to determine the scope and the nature of the harms they've experienced and to really understand the role of the tech platforms in all of it. So the sorts of questions we've asked are, have you been attacked online and targeted online? What's been the nature of the threats? Which narratives have been used? Which platforms? And if you've reported them, like what sort of responses have you had? We've translated the survey into multiple languages, and obviously we're hyper aware of security considerations, given the nature of the content and the people involved. So we built in a lot of protections to address this. And our report, when we eventually publish it, will build on a similar report we did in 2023 that looked at, that surveyed climate scientists and the experience that they have online. And in that report, we found that the online abuse of climate scientists is actually really common, and it takes a mental and physical toll on them and inhibits climate discourse. Most of the abuse we documented in that investigation took place on X and Facebook, both of which are platforms that really should be reforming their policies to better protect climate scientists and defenders and enable a better climate discourse. But actually, if you look at recent events, they seem to be doing quite the opposite. In terms of our findings to date, they're preliminary at the moment, as we're still getting responses through, and they are likely to change. If anyone watching this would like to get a copy of the report as soon as it's released, then I'm happy to provide it. So far, we have responses from every region in the world. Over 70% of the participants have reported online harm suffered across different categories. So doxing, as Disha mentioned, website attacks, the hacking of personal devices, online direct kind of personal attacks, personal images being shared without consent, and other categories. And the responses and case studies that we've spoken to so far show that many defenders are being attacked both online and offline for acts of civil disobedience, which includes allegations of criminality, offline violence, and arrests. And so far, we are seeing a real correlation between offline harm and online harm. So one of the statistics we gathered is that 50% of those who experience online harm are then threatened offline with physical violence, and that a significant majority of those who are affected feel that the harm they experienced online contributed to their offline harm. So the research is showing at the moment that all around the world, the online space is being used to prepare conditions for physical violence and arrests and sometimes even killings. At the moment, we are writing up these findings and working up case studies from those defenders who have kindly offered to share more detail of their stories, and we're hoping to publish in April. Before I finish, I do have one ask. We're still keen to get responses from the survey. So if anybody in the audience is an environmental defender or considers themselves to be an environmental defender or a climate activist, and you're happy to share your experience, we can send you the link to the survey. I think we've shared my contact details, and it takes 10 minutes to complete. And the link that we send you will have details of our privacy and security policy, so you know that anything that you share with us will be kept safe and secure. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ido. This is really enlightening. We will definitely make sure that your survey is further disseminated, and we look forward to seeing the final results. Now we have heard the experiences of the harassment of our speakers, their activities, and the cases documented by Global Witness. Let me say that at ECNL, we have also identified some cases of online civil disobedience undertaken by environmental human rights defenders. And one example in particular stands out because it's even an old one. In 2010, a collective of activists called Decosidio, which was part of Earth First, an environmental protest organization, wanted to protest against carbon trading because it was considered as a false solution to the problem of climate change. And they did so by defacing online the website of the European Climate Exchange. That, in our view, is one case of activism that causes disruption online, and we would classify it as civil disobedience. But we wanted to circle back to Michelle Forst in this case and ask if you have received so far any complaints related to acts of online civil disobedience, and if not, in principle, would you be able to address them under your mandate? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Francesca. Well, we have received quite an increasing number of complaints on civil disobedience coming from different countries, and we see that the trend is increasing currently. The number of complaints are increasing, although they are not so far public. But we have not received complaints related to online civil disobedience so far. We have heard, we have met with defenders who told us that they would put a complaint, but so far we have not received those complaints. As explained, my mandate is very clear. It has been established to respond to penalization, to persecution, to threats, harassment of environmental defenders. And we see that at courts, we see disproportionate sentences coming from the courts. And in the case of defenders that would use online civil disobedience or would face threats, attacks from different sources, yes, of course, Francesca, the mandate is relevant and could also take action in those cases. But as you know, that's the case for all mandate holders, special rapporteurs, to effectively deal with the complaints. That is to be able to speak to the states and to end the penalization or the persecution. We need to know the identity of the victim. And sometimes that's something, a barrier. But for the mandate, that's compulsory to have at least the name and to make sure that we could also check the information and then start to send a letter of allegation. So that's a possibility, and I would like to invite those who are facing those forms of attacks online to look at the possibility to also put a complaint to my mandate. It's very simple. You have a form to fill in on the website, and then my team will contact you to discuss more in detail, and then we'll discuss with you more in detail what form of action the mandate could take.
Thank you so much. That is very reassuring and to hear. And I don't see any questions in the chat so far, but please, by all means, if you don't want to add them now or you want to think about it later, do add them to the documents posted in the chat. And because time is really tyrant, then I would like to seize the opportunity to ask final questions of all our speakers. And indeed, Michelle, after hearing from our activists here how the digital technologies have shaped or affected their climate activism, what would you like to see in terms of actions, apart from what you just, the encouragement to address you in your mandate, but what types of actions would you like to see carried out even by other relevant stakeholders such as the media and the policymakers, and not only by the activists?
That's precisely what we have tried to do with the work done on the guidelines, and I'm pleased to see that on the chat box there is a link to the guidelines, so that people could also look into the guidelines and maybe provide also comments, edits if they think so. Yes, because clearly the final responsibility to protect those defenders from unlawful surveillance with digital means and from online harassment first lie with states. And states have an obligation to protect those defenders. But also, as you said, Francesca, other actors have a role to play. And I'm would be happy to read the report by Global Witness to better understand the findings and your recommendations. First, on the issue of surveillance and privacy. Governments and parliaments should first review current legislations on surveillance, including on online space, to ensure that those legislations are at least in line with international obligations, that is international human law. And for instance, prohibition of the use of mass surveillance and put strict safeguards for what we call targeted surveillance, that is notification at least of persons surveyed and judicial oversight as well. States should also refrain from imposing internet shutdowns before and during protests that we see increasingly in many countries happening. Now, for internet service providers and social media service providers, they should adopt what we call codes of conduct to ensure at least non-interference with the messages of defenders organizing peaceful protests. They should also, those providers, respect the privacy of defenders and refrain from disclosing information to state authorities. And that's something that we also see in some countries. Secondly, on the online harassment, internet service providers and social media providers should also have codes of conduct and procedures to ensure the prompt removal and ensure that only online harassment against defenders are promptly removed, and that's not the case currently. And finally, broader issues of negative portrayals of defenders as criminals or eco-terrorists or Talibans that further expose them to risks should also be removed. Because clearly, for me, that's one of the findings of my two meetings with defenders in Europe, the portrayal of defenders as criminals, as extremists or eco-terrorists, that's something that puts them at risk of harassment and surveillance. And the media has clearly a role to play. And public service and privately owned media should, as I said, adopt code of conduct on conveying and disseminating accurate and fair information on defenders engaged in peaceful environmental protest, which means, like for instance, providing well-balanced coverage, which is not the case with some of the media that we see. Refraining from using wrong terms to describe defenders, and also ensuring that they reflect the emergency and the urgency of climate crisis when they report on peaceful protest that calls for urgent action to address it. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, these are really very practical and useful recommendations that we are very happy to support and see implemented. And now I would also have a question for Hugo, Disha, and Chido. It's the same question for all of you, but I'm sure you will, from your perspective, what would you like to see in terms of action carried out by all the other relevant stakeholders? And how can sessions like this be an incentive to achieve your goals? We hope it can be eventually, but I would start from this time, going in a different order, maybe from Chido.
So I think probably, again, seeing this through the lens of the platforms, I mean, there are some policies in place for some of them that should protect against a lot of the behavior that we have been discussing today. So the hate speech protections, disinformation protections, that sort of thing. But most of those policies aren't enforced properly. Resources aren't put behind them. And actually, since the recent election in America, we've actually seen a rolling back of the policies and a kind of a move away from what was already in place, which kind of wasn't good enough anyway. We're seeing a real pushback and a race to the bottom. So what we'd like to see is better policies from the platforms, and what that probably will require is regulators such as the European Union, which has something called the Digital Services Act, which is one of the most powerful pieces of legislation in this space that exists at a global level. We want to see that enforced, even when under pressure from administrations like the United States that are looking out for their for the platforms that are headquartered there. And in terms of these sessions, I mean, it's amazing to be able to compare and contrast experiences and build up evidence, essentially, that can then be used to apply that pressure. So yeah, really useful to have sessions like this take place. I think maybe Francesca might have frozen.
Yes, apparently she's frozen, no?
Does anybody else want to
yeah, I think she is frozen, but Sorry, I'm just jumping in here, but I think either Disha or Hugo, if you'd like to add any comments, please feel free to do so.
Hugo, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you of my colleague because I have learned a lot, and I think this uh, momentum is very important to connect and to learn from each other, and it will help also to mobilize support. So we can see that one of the benefits of this digital space that we can connect from all corner of the world to learn from each other. And I think important also to know that from Michelle that there's this opportunity to fill a form because sometimes file complaint in internet UN fora can be complicated if you don't have the expertise. But since we learned that you can just fill out a form and the expert from his office can contact to help shape the complaint, that's for me very useful. Because in Suriname, as you know, the politicians don't really respect human rights, then they don't really want the other people to to protest against them, and we have a very small population, so it's more dangerous for country with a small population because everyone know everyone, so it's not that easy to hide or to stay anonymous in taking action, and so that's for me that's also very useful momentum.
Thank you. And it wouldn't be an online session talking about digital threats if there wasn't a glitch. And I was put it out for some reason, but I am back. So thank you for your patience. Yes, and I would like obviously to give the floor to Disha for her perspective on this. And then we have a question from the floor that we have time to ask, but Disha first, please.
Thank you. I think companies can do more in terms of ensuring digital privacy is ingrained in the apps when it's built itself or when it's done. Like a lot of apps like Signal or say Proton Mail are committed to ensuring that kind of privacy, and they allow organizers to organize more. This kind of encryption is more necessary to protect the civil liberties and rights of activists across the world, because at the moment the world runs on data, and every single thought you have, every single thing you type out is shared with so many people, and that really should not be happening because it puts a lot of people at risk. So I think companies have a huge role to play in protecting their consumers, and so do governments, so that they can ensure privacy for all people who, and especially activists who are organizing and who are ensuring that there's a healthy democracy to participate in. Yeah.
Thank you, Disha. I'm going to read the question, and I would like each of you to have 1 minute to reply. But since I can see that we have still a few minutes, perhaps, I would still like to invite Veronica Moreno, who asked these questions, if she would like to voice them, or would you prefer me to read them? I'm happy to give you the floor, Veronica. If, don't be shy. I cannot see you from the screen, unfortunately, but if the moderator, please, you'd have to read it out. Okay, that's great. So the question is, so actually it's two questions. Would you have any advice for activists that may not have experienced a high level of threat, but would like to prevent potential serious future threats. And to explain it better, how can we act before the situation becomes dire? I'm sure that all of you would have precious advice to give from your perspective and your experience and mandate. So I would start from Michelle, maybe, because of your role, and then we go to the activist.
Yeah, thank you. That's very important also to raise the broad issue of prevention, because it's always better to prevent the attacks to occur than to protect, in fact. And in my meetings with defenders, when I'm meeting with them, I explain two things, in fact. The first is the importance of networks. That is to be part of networks of defenders, because at the end of the day, national, international solidarity is the best protection for defenders. And if they are part of a network of or a group of defenders, they could also share experiences with them and learn from the other experiences. And the second one is that we need to protect ourselves against digital attacks. And I guess Chido would be best placed to reply to this, because many organizations have developed mechanisms or tools or trainings to prevent those attacks on computers, on telephones. And the best prevention is not to wait the attacks to occur, but to use all those tools to protect your devices against those attempts to enter your systems. Maybe Chido, you could also complement, because I know Global Witness and others have a long experience in that area.
Thank you. So you give me the assist to pass the floor directly to Chido to follow through.
Yeah, I think there are different techniques that people use, but it can be quite context specific. Definitely having, sort of good online hygiene, for example. It's just quite hard because a lot of people do their activism in their personal capacity, and there's a lot of blend between, the activism that they do and just the life that they're leading. In an ideal world, your online presence would kind of be, you would have so much personal information that people could kind of contact your communities, your family, because that tends to happen and obviously really increases a lot of the stress and worry for people and impact on them. But it's not always possible. But as much as you can do that, obviously do that. There definitely are. We don't actually have policies on it, but I know that other people we work with do have policies around how to protect your websites from attacks. And there are some really good resources around that I think would be really useful. And as much as it sometimes can be frustrating, I do think reporting the attacks and threats that you get to the systems through which they happen can help. I mean, it's not a universal experience that every single defender I've spoken to is like, I've reported it to Facebook or whoever it is and nothing's happened. Sometimes they get useful information. There definitely are case studies where that has happened. I wouldn't say it's the norm. But in the event that some of the threats have turned into direct attacks, I know that evidence like that has been used, to kind of deal with police at a local level and that sort of thing. So that would probably be my advice.
Thank you, Chido. And Hugo, from your perspective, what would you recommend?
Well, I think one of the things try to be part of network, because that's one of the guarantee that if we are you are become part of the network, environmental rights defenders network, then we can information can amplify quick. But still there's a challenge, because from the remote area, on the ground and the less developed country where internet is not well developed, that's still a challenge. Because like I'm here, most of our people, we don't have, we lack a lot of electricity and good internet connection. So sometimes digital don't give you the space, and more sometimes people, company, politicians are feeding the threat from inside. So if the threat is coming from your communities, because people outside are using them to threaten, then it become more dangerous. So and the lack of the development opportunities you have to, and also these language barriers, because in my community we have our own language, so most of the community members are not familiar with English and Spanish or this international language. So that is something other challenge that we face. So that the communication with the allies, like we have a human right environmental right organization called Ally. So if you are part, if you can become a member of Ally, then you have a huge network on environmental defenders, so that you can easily connect with them. But if you don't have this access to internet or electricity, then it become more dangerous for environmental defenders. But still, one of my advice is make sure that your community are aware, that the people knows what is going on, so that the spread of false information, misinformation, because that's very also that start with the spread of false information, and then to that can become worse than when your own community turn against you.
Thank
so
you.
that's my experience.
Indeed, we need to be connected with each other even before being connected online, I would say, and united. But it's already important for us to hear from this experience that we can, we detect, and thanks also to the research from Global Witness that identifies the common threads. Even if the contexts are different, and therefore we can use this to support our advocacy. Now we are closing time, so I would like to, first of all, we have received some screenshots on the poll, so, and we see that there are indeed some I'm sorry, I don't think did I miss Disha's final remark, or sorry, I was launched. If you could actually add your own apologies. Yeah, for a moment I realized that I was giving the floor and was distracted by the polls. Please, Disha, add your final piece of wisdom.
No worries. Thank you, Francesca. I think it's always important to use like secure mediums of communication. I always like to imagine anything I say will be like read out publicly, and that's like a terrifying thought. And not because it's anything I'm saying is necessarily dangerous, but like the violation of privacy is always there. So it's just important to use tools that respect that privacy you have. And it can be for chatting with a friend who's not even connected to your activism work. So using tools like that is very helpful. I'm personally a big fan of Signal and Proton Mail, like the whole Proton suite in general that values privacy and makes organizing much more secure. So I think that is something really important. And just to check out how you can practice digital safety is very, very important, and it differs from country to country. So yeah, check out what works in your country, because that would be very useful.
Thank you, Disha. That is really very concrete advice to end with. And indeed, we will make sure that all this advice is transferred, summarized in our report. So again, I invite the participants that are interested to receive the proceedings, the summary of our discussion and recommendations from our speakers to leave their contact details on the shared documents. Aside with other additional questions, we will also be posting the aggregate results of the polls that we received. Quickly, just to say that we understand that there were mixed replies. So indeed, there is a need to continue having a debate on these, to agree, reach consensus on definitions of civil disobedience, for example, gathering of evidence or awareness of what are the potential or existing digital threats and surveillance. So thank you for joining us, but huge thanks to our participants, to Special Rapporteur Michel Forst, to our environmental activists, Hugo Giabini and Disha Ravi. They're really humbling in their experiences and what they've been going through. The chilling effect is not deterring them from action. And indeed, thank you so much to Cido, Dan, her organization, because documenting this type of facts is also vital to protect the activists and our rights. And thank you so much to our technical moderator, to RightsCon. We will be in touch. We wish you a pleasant rest of the day, wherever you are, and united we are stronger. Thank you. Bye.